there's a new Astro season on immediately around the corner, like within days, if you can believe it. It's incredible. And we at Bleav in Astros, myself, Mike Stanton, my partner here, are back to talk Astros. First, let me tell you just a little bit about Bet Online, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for betting on all the madness. Whose house? Coog's house. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, Bet Online is the ultimate game day companion with the largest selection of odds on everything from college basketball to a $200,000 bracket challenge. I can use 200K. BetOnline continues to be your number one betting source. From every Cinderella story to every buzzer beater, BetOnline has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right, well, Mike, welcome back.
Thanks, Jeff.
It has been how was your off season?
Well, I don't know how much off it really was, but there was no baseball being played. So, yes, as far as that was concerned, it was an off season. It went at times it seemed like it was going slow. Then you look back and all of a sudden months have passed. We're in spring. Here in Texas, spring has sprung. And what does that mean? Pine pollen like crazy. So
brutal.
It's all good. Baseball season right around the corner. And, all the boys are in spring training right now. And these last, 10 days, last week, this time flies by when you're in camp. Now, it depends on it really depends on where you are in your career. If you're a veteran guy, you know where you're going. You've got all your accommodations set. Yeah, it's all about, okay, let's hit this. We usually call it going north. Right. For the Astros, it's actually going more south. West, whatever.
Well, that's true.
Yeah. So, but when you start going north, it's time to get started. If you're a young guy, there's a lot of excitement. If you're a guy on the bubble, there's a lot of anxiety. So there's a lot of things going on here this last week of spring training.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And I want to dig into that, but I want to start by just kind of running through, since it has been since November, since we have been here. I want to just buzz through some of the more notable moments of what has been a crazy offseason. I like thinking back about it. I don't remember an offseason like this for the Astros in recent memory. I mean, it's been a while since we've had the kind of additions, subtractions, trades. We'll start back on December 13th when the Astros traded Kyle Tucker to the Chicago Cubs. Now, this was, I don't want to say unexpected. There was some talk about this leading up to the actual trade. And I think it was a move that was the first of what I would think are a number of moves, both this season and probably going into the next season, that are part of this sort of Astros transitioning. Kyle Tucker was going to be a free agent. He wants to sign a $500 million deal. Doesn't everyone? And, and he had to move on. I just, the details of the trade, they received in return third baseman Isaac Paredes, a guy who will be their starting third baseman this year, and a guy who the Astros wanted at the trade deadline last year, but ended up going from Tampa Bay to Chicago. Was an all-star year before last. Projects actually to be a better hitter this year than Alex Bregman, surprisingly enough. Certainly not the defensive player. They also picked up a pitcher, Hayden Wesneski, which I think is going to be an underrated part of this deal because Wesneski can pitch both from the starting rotation and the bullpen. He's going to be their number 5 starter going into the season. And then finally, prospect Cam Smith, which we're going to dig into a little bit more in a bit because he seems to be a star. But when this deal came down, I know a lot of fans initially were sort of like, what? But it seemed like a necessary move. What were your thoughts? How did you feel when all this happened?
Well, to tell you the truth, I wasn't sure if they got enough, but there's no such thing when you're talking about an MVP caliber player. But, this is the dirty side of baseball. This is the business side of baseball. The Astros had no choice. They were not going to be able to just re-sign him. And simply because now, would they have a chance? Did they have a chance? Sure, they still have a chance. He's still going to be a free agent.
That's fair.
But you know what? Jim Crane just simply is not going to numbers like that. That he has proven that time and time again. Yeah. And just to get to the end of the season and get a draft pick for Kyle Tucker just wasn't enough. So what it really looks like is the crown achievement here is Cam Smith. Now we have to take it all a little bit with a grain of salt, and we'll get to him in just a second. But yeah,
Yeah.
you got two big leaguers, and you got a top prospect, and he ends up coming over to Houston, Cam Smith, and he ends up being going straight into the number one slot as far as the
Yeah.
Astros prospect list. So it was a good haul in return. I don't know if we'll have to wait and see. If you want to go by what Kyle Tucker has done in spring training, the Astros killed this one because he hasn't done anything at all in spring training. But
Exactly.
we know that Kyle Tucker can be as cold as ice
Yeah.
and then surface of the sun hot. So
Yep.
that Kyle is going to put up his numbers.
Sure.
It was not a good day for Astros fans, just simply because Kyle was a fan favorite. This was a MVP caliber player, but you can't just keep letting these guys walk and not get anything in return.
Well, I think that's really the key is the Astros finally, and hey, Joey, who's watching us, thanks for the shout out. Yeah, that was the biggest thing. I mean, there is obviously the Astros don't want to go full fire sale. This is not 2011 or whatever it
Right.
was when they dumped everybody. But it makes sense to strategically make decisions like this one, as much as it might have pained us. And the fact of the matter is, Kyle Tucker was definitely going to get you the biggest return, whatever that was.
Sure.
Now, second on that list might have been Framber Valdez. He did not get moved. Whether he does during the season, we don't know. He is still going to be a free agent after the season. But in response to trying to continue to fill holes, especially the bat hole, on just a couple days before Christmas Eve, the Astros signed Christian Walker. Now, I know he's been injured a bit in training camp. Looks like he'll be back. It's
Right.
not anything serious. The thing that Walker really gives you is he is the first legitimate first baseman now they've had since Yuli.
Right.
And he is a guy who not only gives you a gold glove at first base 3 years running with Colorado, not Colorado, sorry, with Arizona.
Arizona. Yeah.
And they give him 3 years, 60 million. Let's call it the fingers crossed Jose Abreu deal, where that deal was just disastrous for them,
Yeah.
both offensively and defensively. Walker's is going to be a substantial upgrade. But it was their big signing of the
And
offseason.
he's a 30 home run bat. I mean, this
Exactly.
is a legitimate power source
With pull.
with pull power. And so, I think you look at that signing and you go, okay, now, where all the drama was Alex Bregman was still out there. And there
Right.
were rumors off and on all offseason. As soon as he became a free agent, Jim Crane put forth. Well, I didn't realize at the time that it was going to be his best offer because he never came off of it.
Yeah.
And it was a legitimate offer. I mean, what was 150, $156 million?
Yes.
Which is a very, there's no way you can say $150 million isn't a legitimate offer.
Right.
But that's not what Alex was looking for. Alex was looking for, 200 plus million. We all knew that because his agent, Scott Boras, has told us that.
Right.
Offseason did not work out the way Alex thought it was going to. And, when you hire Scott Boras as your agent, there's a really good shot you are going to set some kind of record when you sign your contract. There's also not nearly as big of a percentage, but there's also a chance that you're going to get shut out. And I can't really say he got shut out, but he did not get anything close to what he was looking for from the Red Sox. And, to tell you the truth, I thought that him becoming a Red Sox actually might make more sense than him being an Astro. I think he has a chance of being an MVP caliber player again because of the Green Monster. I think he is going to wear, it's like a base to boot, which I never understood that one either. I mean, you got a Gold Glove third baseman, and the guy that's playing third base is, we'll say, subpar to say the least.
Well,
and Rafael Devers,
he doesn't want to move.
Well, call me old school, but I remember a time where you played where the manager told you to play.
Well, that would be the team play, and that's certainly
Yes.
something Alex Bregman would do,
So
as he is.
I'm not closing the book on the idea of Alex Bregman being their third baseman because him being a second, no, he's going to be a good second baseman. Okay. Is he
Yeah.
going to be great? Who knows? It's a question mark, but you're subpar at third. So now you have left your third base at subpar, and your second base is a question mark. When if you put Rafael Devers at first base, as long as his mindset is right, if you can play third, you can play first. And then you're a great upgrade at third base. Anyways, this isn't Bleav in the Red Sox, but anyways, the whole idea was Alex Bregman hadn't signed, and the Astros were still there. You still thought that maybe there's a chance,
Yeah.
especially when we got later into the offseason. When you got into late January, you're
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, Bregman's got to be getting a little antsy here. End up not working out. Paredes is your third baseman. I know we also had there was some other drama. There was other things going on. So Nolan Arenado situation. I mean, there was a lot going on this offseason.
There was, and when it comes down to look, when I start thinking about we did this for this, basically we traded away Kyle Tucker. We lost Alex Bregman. The return for those guys in the immediate future, and let's be honest, Justin Verlander left too, which I think
Right.
we all knew was going to happen. In return, we got Isaac Paredes, Christian Walker, and Hayden Wesneski. I mean, that's really the return, and that's basically how we turned everything around. Now, like I said, Paredes is not going to be the defensive player that Alex Bregman is. Alex
Right.
Bregman's a phenomenal defensive player, but Paredes projects Fangraphs is projecting he will be better offensively than Alex Bregman, particularly because he is a pull hitter and in a very hitter friendly park.
Okay.
He's probably going to hit more homers than Alex Bregman is. So we'll see. I know
He's got Fenway.
I know he does. But
got
I mean, is there a shorter porch than Minute Maid though on the right side?
Well, listen, one of the things I was a Red Sox player twice, and
Right.
one of the statements you make is the wall giveth and the wall taketh
Yeah.
away. There are some rocket home runs that hit the top of the wall that end up sometimes being a single.
Right.
But for Alex, who it wasn't till halfway through the season last year he started hitting the ball hard again.
Right.
All those 96 to 98 mile an hour home runs, exit velocity home runs. Those are going to be home runs at Fenway.
Yep. They sure are.
And where Minute Maid Park, well, not Minute Maid, Dakin Park, where the Crawford boxes end and then it goes deep where it gets close to the bullpen, the visiting bullpen.
Right.
That's all still Green Monster.
Yes, it still is. You're
So
right.
I can remember my first outing at Fenway. It was as a Red Sox player. I'd been playing in the National League. I got traded over. My first American League park was Old Tiger Stadium. And what a dump that place was, especially towards the end. And then we went from there and we went to Fenway. And I remember, we got in late at night and I walked through the tunnel and walked out. And I'm like, man, this place is cool. Because I'd only ever seen it on TV.
Right.
And the first time I pitched there, I felt like, if you remember, I did not go out of the windup. I only went out of the stretch. Being a left-hander, the wall is behind me. It felt like it was like pushing on my left shoulder as I came set. I mean, that's how close it felt. But
it hovers over you. I've never been there either. I'm going to be in Boston.
Very cool place.
In the middle
very
of summer.
Cool ballpark.
Yeah, I'm going to be there for a couple of days before a trip, and I'm definitely trying. I'm planning to get to Fenway, ball game or no.
Yeah,
I do think you look at and you say, okay, do you replace Tucker and Bregman with Paredes and Walker? No, you don't. But you don't get demonstrably worse. You get modestly worse with those, and that's a lot.
Well, I mean, the problem you have with the Tucker situation is that he the only chink in the armor has been his health.
Right.
And so when you look at him and you look at the numbers now, early in the season last year, he was like the only thing that the Astros had. And
he was.
but then when he got hurt, he was out a long,
He was.
long time. Um, we talked about that at the end of the season last year about how
Yep.
it's not a break, it's not a break for 3 months. Then all of a sudden he's coming back and
That
his
unbelievable.
ankle's broken.
I know, it's
Um,
ridiculous.
and I'm sure, actually, to tell you the truth, I think that may have had a little to do with the idea that you weren't going to be able to re-sign him. To me, that made him look, uh, you know, through those 3 months, kind of made him look like a baby. If
Mhm.
it's only a bruise, why is it taking so long?
Yeah.
And then he's the one that broke the news as he was coming back that the ankle was there
Right.
was a break, and then Dana Brown, yeah, after many scans, then we did find out that there was a break, and it was just the optics of it were just not what it should have been.
It was not great. And I will say too, one thing that's really uh interesting to me about this offseason and is, when you look at all of these changes, because we had another one in the Ryan Presley being traded.
Mhm.
Um, it feels to me, and
Also
I
to the
think,
Cubs.
yeah, also to the Cubs. Yeah, I mean, we could trade somebody else to the Cubs while we're at it. I feel like, for the Astros, and I think I said this even at the end of last season. I've certainly written about it. This is a transitional phase for the Astros. This is a team that doesn't have a great farm system. They have some what feels like quality major league talent, but no major superstars, minus perhaps Cam Smith, who we'll talk about. Um, and but this is a way for them with the losing Bregman. They're going to get a compensatory pick for him. Um, and this is a way for them to start sort of restuffing their coffers to a certain degree. It's not a perfect or ideal circumstance. It certainly leaves them in a bit of an awkward position, particularly in the bullpen where there are some serious holes. Um, but I think they made the best of a bad situation,
Yeah.
and they did so. They did something uncharacteristically Astros, which is they made a bold move before the bold move was made for them. And so I give them a lot of credit for making that deal. The one other thing that did happen this offseason, you mentioned a moment ago, and I have to say something about it before we move on and talk about the current roster, is the name change to Dyken Park. Now, let me just say this. I have never been someone who cared very much about ballpark names,
Right.
uniform styles. I will say that the Astros city unis look pretty sweet. I've never really cared much about that. I know a lot of people do. I know it's very personal for them. But I remember everybody just freaking out about Minute Maid. And I'm like, it was Enron Field before that, right? And
Right.
by the way, the best name of the ballpark, bar none, is the ballpark at Union Station. That's the best name for it. It only lasted a few months before Enron bought the naming rights. But I don't have a problem with Dyken Park. They're obviously a very good steward. I've read some things about them. They have their American headquarters here. They're a Japanese company. They make air conditioning units.
Right.
They're going to call it the ice box, which seems pretty cool. No pun intended. And listen, you look around at what they've done, they're pretty good in the community. They've been a pretty good steward for their business and for their community. I think they're down in like Rosenberg or somewhere like that, and they've been
Hmm.
really, really helpful to that community. So I have no problems with it. But I know a lot of people went into some apoplectic shock at, oh no, Minute Maid, Coca-Cola doesn't even reside in
Nobody,
Houston anymore.
nobody likes change.
Yeah,
That's what it is. I mean, no,
yeah.
that's just, it's just the lay of the land.
And it
And,
is the
the
nature of
Astros,
things.
well, then the Astros are in business to what? Well, to make money.
That's
Yes,
right.
they're in there to win, but why do they want to win? Because winning makes money. And,
Yep.
somebody's going to offer you, a dump truck full of money, then, we'll do what we have to do. So,
Exactly. And I
it's
think
just, I think
it's
what it
fun.
is more than anything else is it's just people will get used to it very
Yeah.
quickly, but it's just an odd name.
It is an odd name.
Dakin is just a odd.
Yeah.
Am I saying it right?
It's
Is it
Dyken,
Dakin?
I believe.
Dakin,
I actually looked it
Dakin,
up. Dyken Park.
Dakin Park. It's an odd name,
It's weird,
but
and it's weird to spell.
whatever.
I've written about it a couple times, and I
Yeah.
have to check my spelling multiple times. I'm like, "Is it DAI, DIA?" I'm like, "Yeah." So it is a little weird, but listen, if they give the Astros a bunch of money and it helps us sign other players, then who cares?
Right.
They could name it. Well, actually, they should name it Tenacious D Park. They should just call it that. Then it'd be fine. So let's talk about this current lineup. A little bit about the roster. We can get deeper into this next week when roster cuts are finally made. We get down to the
Right.
final 26. But let's talk about a couple of the big sort of discussions this offseason. And the first one really has to be Jose Altuve's move to left field. Now, initially, the idea was I'll make a move to left field because you can re-sign Alex Bregman.
If
We'll
yes.
move Paredes to second base, although I'm not sure he would have been great at second. And then that didn't happen. And yet,
And that was to bring Bregman back.
right.
I mean, the whole idea was to bring Bregman back.
And yet here we have now we've a lot. This has been a lot have been talked about this and written about this. Jose Altuve was not a great defensive second baseman.
No.
His range is diminished, and certainly half of the season will be played in a very, very friendly left field for someone like him. He's thrown the ball pretty well in spring training. His reads on the ball have been a bit of an adventure. Some of this will be mitigated by the fact that you have Jake Myers playing center field, who is one of the better defensive center fielders in baseball, assuming he can hit a little. But with Altuve out, they clearly they need him in the lineup because of his bat. I just wonder how much are we going to be sacrificing defensively in left field and how long will this last?
See, I don't think this is as big of a deal as everyone makes it out to be.
Okay, good.
My approach to this, my view on this is whenever an infielder moves to the outfield, so you move further away from home plate. I don't want to say it's an easy transition, but it's an easier transition than the other way around. Okay. Because when you move from outfield into infield, the game gets very fast, very quickly.
Boy.
Okay. Now, the one thing that Altuve, we know about Altuve is he is an athlete. Okay. Yeah. He still runs extremely well. I mean, are there going to be some hiccups? Are there going to be some bad reads? Sure. There's going to be. Okay. But the one thing we do know is Jose doesn't like to be embarrassed, and I think that he has put in the work this spring to at least be average. But I also think that this very well may end up being a blessing in disguise because it's going to allow some of the defensive pressure of playing infield to be taken off of him, and there may be a bump up in offense. So as far as his throwing arm, his arm is plenty strong enough. We've seen him, make plays on the left side of the infield, like from the shortstop position, throwing across. There's not good. It's not like he's got a bad arm. He does not have a bad arm. Now he's got to lengthen it out a little bit. And again, it's going to be more about hitting your cutoff man than anything else. So, and then closing speed, we know he's got that. So that I don't think this is going to be nearly as big of a deal. Like I said, early in the season, maybe there's a hiccup here or there, but with him, him at the top of the lineup, I'll take a hiccup here or there. I have played with some bad defensive players behind me. And what you would say is one of the ones I loved him to death as a teammate was Mike Greenwell, who actually played left field at Fenway, and he was not a good D. But you ask him, well, what kind of you ask a coach, so what kind of outfielder is Mike Greenwell? And the answer is, man, could he hit? That's if that's going to be the approach for Jose Altuve, but I think he's going to be at least average just because of the athleticism that Jose still has.
And he's probably not going to play there every single day. He will, I have no doubt, get some time at second on occasion. He will DH on occasion, and Jordan will get some time in the outfield, although limited. So yeah, I'm with you on the athleticism. I'm not worried at all about his arm because I think that wasn't his big problem at second base. I think it was his range. I think he just wasn't.
See, I don't even think it was that. I think it was, where we really saw issues, in my opinion, was more a lack of concentration.
That's interesting.
That he just there were times that he just didn't look like he was completely involved. Now, I have no inside information. This is just my own deranged eyes looking and seeing, what I see. But, a lot of the errors he had were were, just more, how can I say this? More, we'll say lack of concentration,
Yeah.
maybe a touch lazy.
They had he had some brain farts for sure.
He didn't like moving his feet on a routine ground ball. He kind of would just flip the ball to first. Most of the time it was okay.
Yeah.
Every once in a while it wasn't. And that's just a lack of focus.
Well, I think the Astros fell off defensively just in general last season, and I think that is something they've made a significant focus.
Yeah.
While we're on the subject, though, of him, it does leave the hole open at second base. I think that initially it's Mauricio Dubon who's going to fill that spot. He's certainly much better
Which is going to be an
defensively.
upgrade. Yes.
Yes, much better defensively. I am interested to see how that changes their philosophy, because Dubon is so valuable as a guy that can play
Yeah.
all over the field.
It's a good
It
point.
does, and after having the spring that he had, I know they want to get him at bats in minor league, but I can't help but thinking that as we get further along in the year, if he's playing well at Sugarland, Bryce Matthews might get his shot, and they will be able to move him in and out,
Yeah.
allowing Dubon to play. I also think if they do choose to go with Dubon at second, and I think that's what they'll do, it opens a spot for Zach DeZenzo. Because not only has he hit the ball really well, but he can play 4 or 5 different positions on the
Sure.
field. He's a guy that could potentially be the next Mauricio Dubon for the Astros, which is a valuable thing. But I am very interested to see how they balance this lineup. I think it's pretty clear who your sort of top 5 or 6 guys are going to be.
Yeah.
I'm just real interested to see where it goes from there. Once you get to the bottom of that order, is Chas McCormick going to hit? Is Jake Myers going to hit? Is Dubon going to get everyday playing time? Because he does hit when he gets playing time. It's just going to
Sure.
be the whole thing's going to be interesting to watch.
I do agree with you that Mauricio Dubon, his biggest value is in his versatility. Because anywhere you put him on the field, he is going to be above average defensively. To tell you the truth, I think he might be as good a center fielder as Jake Myers. I mean, he is legit in the outfield, but he's also legit anywhere else you put him.
Yeah.
The problem is when you put him at one position, now there's more emphasis on the bat. And we've seen him swing the bat well at times.
Mhm.
Okay. And I think he swings the bat better now than he did when he became an Astro. But it's still one of those things that you kind of have to weigh everything out.
Right.
And I think that his defensive prowess all the way across the field is something that is it's legit. That's where his real value is. So, I think that there'll be a situation that some of these young guys like Matthews will come up and get some playing time.
Mhm.
And it might not be because Mauricio's not doing the job even offensively at second base, but
Right.
there might be guys around the field that need to be spelled.
Yes.
And that's where Dubon can step in. So, it's going to be a fluid situation to say the least. Every roster is.
Yes.
But then there's one other guy I think we need to talk about.
Yeah, that's Cam. We're going to talk about him next. I was going to say also that injuries are going to happen.
Sure.
And so when those injuries happen, they're going to have to make do, which is, and we'll talk about this next week, because I do want to talk about the roster construction. They are going to have to carry some guys on this roster that might surprise people, simply because they are going to need players with minor league options. And they don't have a boatload of them. And the thing is, when you have injuries and when you have problems, if you don't have anybody with options, then you can't send anybody down. You can't replace those guys. So that's
you can't you have to release them. You can't call them back up. So
it's a problem. So but we'll get to that next week. Yes, let's talk about Cam Smith. Okay, so for those who did not know anything about Cam Smith, like myself, probably like you, Mike, because I don't know how much time we all spend studying the Cubs minor league system.
Not very much.
Exactly.
And I think that may be an exaggeration.
Exactly. I spent about as much time doing that as I do, spending time like studying the ping pong players from China, which is to say none. I will say
little
this.
Forrest Gump action. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I will say this. Cam Smith just from a look standpoint, he obviously looks the part of a major leaguer.
Yes, he does.
He swings. His swing looks like a big swinging major leaguer. He has a tremendous eye in the batter's box, which really surprised the hell out of me, because his ability to see, because listen, the Astros, one of their big problems last year is they got away from their ability to take walks, and now they've got Isaac Paredes and Christian Walker, who both are fantastic at going long into counts, and Cam Smith is like that. But when you look at this, just his overall power and the ease at which he hits the ball, they're going to have to get him onto this roster sooner, probably, rather than later. Does that mean he makes the opening day roster? I don't know. I'm not sure, because they might want him getting lots of at bats, which
Yeah.
he's not going to get here. But the kid is
Well, especially
obviously
with the idea of him playing a new
right
position.
field. Yes, playing
Yeah.
right field. I think in fact, I did some reading on this the other day, and then I'm going to let you get into it. I read that there are a number of guys who scouted him and have read up on him, and stat guys and scouts and so forth, who all think that eventually he was going to make a better outfielder than an infielder. Not because he was a bad third baseman or anything, which is his natural position, but because many of them felt like his quickness served him better in a bigger outfield than it did on the infield.
Yeah.
So his move there, look, in a couple of years, we could have an outfield of entirely new guys.
Sure.
We could have Jacob Milton in center field. We could have Cam Smith. We could have Luis Baez in left field. It's a changing one, but I think when you look at his power and you look at his ability at the plate, it just can't be denied. And there's going to have to be a way for them to they're going to have to find a way to get him into the lineup.
I know there's been a lot of talk about him making this roster, out of spring training. Okay. And there's a chance. There's absolutely a chance. And it looks like that idea, well, at least it's building momentum as far as a talking point. He has gotten very little minor league experience, especially in the upper reaches of the minor leagues.
That's correct.
And if you talk to any scout, they will all tell you, especially back when, the 40-man roster was still the 40-man roster in September.
Yes, right.
You have to take spring training and you have to take September. You have to take those performances with a grain of salt,
right.
For young players coming up. And he's had a tremendous spring. And what I like of what he has done, it's not the power. We knew the power was there, but he's got an advanced approach at the plate. I don't want to put him in the same category as Jordan, but he's leaning more towards Jordan than he is, a regular guy that only has, a couple dozen at bats at the upper reaches of the minor leagues. So he's shown that he's got an advanced approach. The problem is, where is he going to play? Because he can't sit. This is a guy that needs to be getting consistent at bats every single day, or 5 or 6 days a week.
Yes.
Okay. Is he going to be able to do that in Houston? I don't know. And that's something that Joe Espada and company, they're going to have to figure that out. And I don't think, if he's not going to play, 4 or 5 days a week, I think he has to start in the minor leagues.
Yeah, I agree with you. 100%.
Now, if he was playing a position that he normally plays, which is third base, then at least defensively, defensively, he is what he is. Okay. He will get better once he gets his feet grounded in Major League Baseball, but he's at least playing his natural position. You're talking about moving him to right field. And again, yes, he is moving further away from the plate. We just talked about that with Jose Altuve. Right. But there's one big caveat. There's one big elephant in the room here, and that's him becoming a big leaguer. And there is a lot of pressure that comes along with being on an opening day roster for the first time.
Yes.
So I still think, and I could be completely wrong about this, but I still think we see him in AAA at the beginning of the season.
I agree with you.
Let him get his feet wet. Let him play some right field. Let him get some reps that aren't in the very well lit day games of Florida, the Grapefruit League.
Exactly.
And
Sugarland.
Yeah, and just let him kind of ease into being an Astro without that pressure. Let him hit some home runs, let him light it up, and then bring him up, because it's one thing to have guys on the roster that have those options to go up and down.
Yes.
Cam Smith is not one of those dudes.
No. And
when he makes the big league roster, when he puts on a Houston Astros uniform, you do not ever want to have to send him back down.
Well, yeah, Brian Abreu has options left, but that doesn't mean they're sending Brian
That's
Abreu
right.
to
Right.
Sugarland. I
Right.
mean, I think that the thing that I see with Cam Smith, and the reason I think that it's it is the right move to move him down to AAA. All the things you cited, I think, are 100% correct. There are also salary considerations in terms of his time of play in the major leagues and how that contributes to when he goes into arbitration and all those other things. But I also think that look, Matthews, Melton, and Smith are the three guys right now in terms of position players who are the closest to being ready to play at the major league level.
Mhm.
I think Dezenza is the other one, but he had some time with the Astros last year, which is why I think he's got a better shot of making the roster and being productive. But when you look at those three guys, none of them spent a full season at AAA last year.
Right.
They are all guys that rocketed through the minor leagues, rightfully so, and good for Dana Brown for being aggressive in that way. But I do think there is real value in giving them time. Having said that, there will be a tremendous focus on Chas McCormick early in this season. I don't think
Yeah.
anybody there is going to be
Well, and
so
I
much
think Jake
focus on
also.
him. Yes,
I
I
think
do.
Jake Myers also.
At least with Jake Myers, we can look at him and say Jake Myers is a plus level defender, in the outfield. He's a guy that he can save runs for you in the outfield. Now, maybe he can't hit his way out of a paper sack. We don't know. But I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on the Astros when looking at those guys in their outfield and making decisions about what they're going to do. And then the other place where we're going to be looking at, especially after the first month of the season, is the starting rotation. Because I'm wearing my Bury Me in the H hat today in honor of Lance McCullers finally returning from injury. For how
Yeah.
long? Who knows? For where? Who knows?
Right.
But he pitches tonight in his first live action, real live action game action in a long time. I have a very hard time imagining Lance McCullers shows back up in an Astros uniform and immediately goes back into the starting rotation. It just seems so far-fetched to me, especially if you have a good starting rotation to begin with.
Mhm.
If your starting rotation is performing pretty well, maybe a sixth guy, or a piggyback guy. I've got to figure they've got to give him a really, really long leash when it comes to working up to throwing more than 2 or 3 innings.
Sure.
Yeah. What do you
Listen,
think?
we know how good Lance can be.
Yes,
Okay.
we do.
Now you got to go back in the archives to find it because he's been hurt so much.
He has been.
But we know if he's healthy, the dude's got outs in him.
Oh,
And
for sure.
what is he going to do? I would have to think he's going to be, kind of a long man out of the bullpen.
Yep.
Maybe he is a spot starter. But there's no way he can go right back into even a 6-man rotation and you're going to give him the ball and he's going to go out there and give you even 80 pitches, much less 100 pitches every
Right.
6 days.
Right.
That's not going to happen. He's
No.
going to have to ease back into it. And I think anything you get from Lance, and I hate to say it this way because, the caveat was I just said how good Lance could be.
Yeah.
Whatever you get from Lance right now is a bonus. And I hope that we get a big bonus. I
Me too.
hope that he's healthy and he's out there and he's spinning the ball like he's done all of his life and he's able to take the ball. Now, is he going to be a better starter than a reliever if everything works out the way Lance wants it to? Because
Yeah.
Lance doesn't want to be a reliever. He wants
Hell
to be
no.
a starter. I think he's back in the rotation. And it's probably at the back end of the rotation.
Yeah.
Same thing to give him off days when he needs to. But
Yes.
I don't think he can be there. And again, I think we're a little ahead of the curve right
Yeah.
now just simply because he hasn't pitched in a big league game yet.
We'll find out today.
At least the big league spring training game. And it's
Uh-huh.
good to see him back because, when spring training started, they were talking about midsummer. So
Yeah.
we'll have to
Well,
wait and see exactly, what they have. The thing is, we started off the show talking about, regular season starts in a week. Does he start the season on the opening day roster?
I don't think so.
so.
No, I don't think there's any chance.
No,
Listen,
I think that he's got to get some minor league experience.
Yes.
He needs to kind of work his way through. It's been a long, what's it been 2.5 years since
Yes.
he's pitched?
It has been. Look, you're right. I don't think there's any way he starts in the majors. They definitely want him to pitch in the minors, probably for a good solid month, I would
Yeah.
think. Um, you also have Luis
Now that
Garcia.
may be, I'm sorry, that may be also out of the rotation
Oh, I
in the
agree.
minor leagues, just simply because now it's a much more
Yeah.
controllable situation when he's starting the game. He can take as much
Sure.
time as he wants to warm up. There's not that
Yes.
urgency that you would have
And
coming
they
out of
put
the
him on a
bullpen.
pitch count,
Yep.
and he comes out. Yeah, and then you've got Luis Garcia, who, by all accounts, is going to be ready in about a month to
Hmm.
start his rehab, which is great. He's throwing from a mound now. Um, the pitching from a starting rotation standpoint, the Astros have a real shot, especially now that I just read the other day that Christian Javier is ahead of schedule, and they're
Hmm.
saying perhaps All-Star break. They could have really a really good starting rotation. Never mind the fact that they kind of already do have a very good starting rotation.
Yeah.
Um, I think what's going to be real interesting is to see how the Astros balance their pitching throughout this season. How are they going? Who's going to step up in the bullpen? Because we know there's like four guys right now. They're with Hader and Abreu and Taylor Scott and Brian King. Those are probably your locks. Caleb Ort is now pitching again, so he's probably a pretty good lock for there. But then you have to start after those first five, things get pretty dicey. And if they're going
Yeah,
to
they
have
do.
seven guys in the bullpen, which it seems logical they will, then at the beginning of the season, when you really need more bullpen arms, they might not have everybody that they're going to need to have. And
True.
so we're going to see. And again, we'll dig into the roster next week and really kind of start picking that apart and figuring out what's going to happen. But for myself, speaking as a fan of the Astros, a longtime fan of the Astros, and just a baseball fan in general, I'm actually really interested in this season. Not as I certainly I want the Astros to win. I wrote a story a couple of weeks ago where I said there are like sort of five projected possibilities for the Astros this year, and four of them are not what anybody really probably wants, right?
Right.
You know,
Right.
the best case scenario out of that is make the playoff, lose in the first round, right? Um, and but I do think this is going to be a really interesting season because I think we're going to see a lot of different faces playing for this team. I think we're going to see a changing of the guard, so to speak, of moving from some older, more established players into some younger, new faces. I think guys are going to get opportunities that maybe wouldn't have gotten opportunities in other seasons when the Astros were legitimately contending for a title, which I don't think they
Hmm.
will this season. So I think it's going to be a really fun year from that standpoint. There might be fewer wins. I think they're probably going to be around 500, maybe a little bit better. Um, but I do think this is a year where we're going to start to see some real transition and seeing, it won't be, we're not going to be in 2012 or 2013. We're not going to be like losing
Right.
100 games. But I do think we're going to start to see some of these new faces. And I think that's kind of exciting if you're an Astros fan.
It is. And as far as the wins and losses are concerned, really what you're looking to do is hang around 500. To
Yeah,
tell you the truth, the Astros got extremely lucky last
they
year.
sure did.
How bad they played early in the season. They had no business winning this division. And the only reason they did is why? The Seattle Mariners fell apart yet again. You're still playing in the same division. It is not a strong division.
It's not.
So the Astros still, but if you look at the odds, the Astros, heck, I'm not even sure if they're in the top 10 as far as odds on winning the World Series.
Actually, I
Uh,
saw the projections. The power rankings on the Athletic have them at 8
okay,
in the
hey,
major leagues
so
right now.
just inside the top 10.
Yeah.
So so there's a lot of teams that are ahead of them. So it kind of makes them, well, kind of the underdog. So it's one of those situations. The other silver lining is most of the big, powerful teams are now all in the National League.
Boy, is that
I mean, the
not the
National
truth.
League is
My
freaking
goodness. I mean,
stacked,
it's unbelievable. Like the Dodgers are basically an all-star team.
right?
It's ridiculous.
But
And
and
the
and
Braves,
whether it's the Braves and the
Phillies,
Phillies and
the Mets.
Soto going over to the Mets, and I mean it's crazy how good some of those National League teams are.
It
And
really
the
is.
good thing about it is now they get to beat up on each other. Now the
Right.
Astros have to play them all because you play all
Yes.
29 teams, but The Astros, to go back to it, the Astros are still, in a good spot because
I
of the division in which they play.
Well, I think when you look at the AL West, the Mariners didn't get better. They didn't sign anybody, and their
Right.
biggest problem was offense last year, and they didn't sign anybody to help them offensively. You could argue they got worse offensively, which is hard to imagine. The Rangers didn't really get any better this
Mhm.
offseason. They're hoping for a reemergence of a Aroldis Chapman and,
Right.
the 40-year-old pitchers. The A's, their biggest thing is they moved. They did sign a couple
Right.
of interesting players, but
Yeah, they're going to be better,
they're
but
going to be
that's
better,
just because
certainly.
they were so bad.
Yeah, and then you've got the Angels who
Still can't
they
pitch.
they made some moves, but not enough. So
Right.
the AL West is still, kind of a dumpster fire of a division, and so it's going to be a real interesting. I saw a bunch of projections around. I was looking the other day, and I think a lot of people are picking the Rangers. I, I can understand that. I can kind of see it, but boy, you're betting on a lot to go right for the Rangers.
Sure.
Because even when they won the World Series 2 years ago, I mean, it was there was a lot that went right for them in that year
Well, and they
offensively.
basically beat teams into submission.
They did.
Their offense was ridiculous, and
Yes.
last year was,
Back to normal.
you were expecting them to take a step backwards because it seemingly everything went right in 2023.
Yeah.
So usually you don't get, unless you're a really good team and a really healthy team, you don't get those back to back years. So
Yeah.
the Astros are in a good spot. They seem to be getting healthy. They're doing everything they need to do in this last week of the season of spring. I keep on calling it spring break, of
Yeah,
spring
right. It is
training.
spring break.
What's it say? Hope springs eternal. That's where we
That's
are.
right. Yeah, and right now, the only thing you want the Astros to do is get into opening day without getting hurt.
Right.
Don't trip over the
What
bat
I didn't
flag.
finish what I was saying. 500. Hang around 500 until you get hot.
Yeah.
And that's what you're really looking to do. That's what they didn't do last year,
Yeah.
and they got really lucky and able to get back. And actually, they got back into the crazy thing was they got back into the race in like 3 weeks.
No, in a like very, very fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was crazy. I agree with you, Mike. I think it's going to be a very interesting season for the Astros. I'm actually looking forward to seeing some new faces. Not that I'm bored of like, oh, it's so terrible to be winning all the time. It's like what's that line from the show Friends? Like, my wallet's too small for all my 50s and my diamond shoes are too tight. It's like, I mean, it's like everything's been, pretty much coming up roses for
Right.
Astros and Astros fans for a while. So I don't want to lose any of that, but I do think it will be really fascinating to kind of see how some of these guys fit in. Look, Paredes is likely going to be an Astro for a while. This is
Yeah.
not like it's not a short-term signing. Christian Walker's got a 3-year guaranteed deal. He's not going anywhere for a while. So these are going to be the
Well, yeah, and you
Astros
got
that
Altuve long term. You got
yeah,
Jordan long term. I mean,
yeah.
you still
Yiner.
got players.
Let's
Yeah,
not forget about how good Yiner was last year,
that's
and he'll
right.
probably be good again this year. Jeremy Pena's been playing very well. I think it's just going to be a really interesting season more than anything. Just from
It's going to be a battle,
if you can set
a
aside
lot
just
like last year was.
yes, agreed. If you can just set a little bit of the I'm desperate for them to win another trophy aside, I think it's going to be a fascinating watch.
It will.
I'm always envious of those guys. You ever seen those guys that they fill out the scorecards and they're very detailed about like every single game. And they seem to have like a kind of a mindset of like, wow, this is as fascinating to me as winning and losing. I always kind of
Right.
envied those guys instead of being the one that used to break remote controls when things didn't go his way.
Yeah, get on that emotional roller coaster. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, thanks everybody for joining us at our inaugural 2025 podcast. We'll be back next week. Next week, we'll dig deeper into the roster and really start talking about where this team is going to be, especially starting the season, what their rotation is going to be, and sort of where we're going to go from here. A season's upon us, which that is in and of itself is exciting.
Yeah.
We've got
Right.
March Madness starting this weekend. Go Cougs! #1 seed for the third straight year. The Rockets are kicking everybody's butt right now as well. It's not a terrible time to be a Houston sports fan. Just
It
saying.
is not. It is not. But we are looking forward to opening day and getting this 2025 Major League Baseball campaign started. And
Absolutely.
we'll just have to see what this roller coaster looks like.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks for joining us, guys. We will see you next time. As always, go Astros.
Adios.